Hello there, good evening. Welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt with a bit of a hoarse voice and a chest infection, but we battle on as we always do. And I'm joined by a man that's obviously going to do a lot of the heavy lifting with the chatting. It is, of course, my bald brother number 2, my other associate, as it were. It is, of course, Stevie Woods. Mate, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, as always, back in the channel. And to everybody out there in YouTube land or on X, wherever you're choosing to watch us, glad to have you all here with us as well. Mate, as it says there on top, this title scrap has absolutely now zero margin for error after that Hibs loss. We don't have such a thing as mulligans. There's no retakes. We're going to have to do it the hard way. We're also probably going to look for a wee bit of favours, and it has become an uphill battle. Where are you at? I know it's obvious, but where are you at right now with this title fight?
I don't want to blow my own trumpet, Steve-o, but I have said on numerous of the previous shows that I doubted very, very much that any of the top 4 teams would go the remainder of the season unbeaten. Disappointing to lose the game last night, bit of a roller coaster, as we'll kind of get onto once we deep dive into it. But as Martin says, we're not finished yet. 11 games to go, and we just need to keep the faith.
Well, keeping the faith is one of those things, and that is that. It says, like, we've always been honest with you here. We've always sat and gave you our honest opinion. At times it's been unpopular, but yeah, I think I can look at the way that folk are approaching us. There is some out there who are completely and utterly saying it's game over, it's done, it's cooked. But then, of course, we've got to be honest, despite it looking unlikely, there is still reason to be optimistic in terms of you've got 2 games. You do have 2 games against Rangers, game against Hearts, and you've got to win them. The one thing on the balance of that as well, then, of course, is when you look at that top 6 and you look at what it's going to be, there's no any hard game. There's no any easy games in there. Let's be totally honest. There is none, and it is a packed. The next 2 weeks are absolutely massive for Celtic and for Martin and Neill, and you've just got to hope that we can pull it out. One of the things that we spoke about on a show a wee while ago was we asked the question, this can't keep happening, can it? These last-minute winners, this riding our luck, we surely can't keep on doing that. And it seemed as if the luck was out. We'll talk about it. We'll start off, as we always do, with the team lineup. A lot of people are saying Martin maybe got that wrong. We'll chew over that, have a wee think about, well, what do we do? Game against Stuttgart, dead rubber. Is there such a thing when you're a Celtic fan? But there is, of course, that game. And then, more importantly, the massive one, of course, is up at Ibrox down at the weekend. So we'll have a wee look at all of that kind of stuff. There's more of you starting to filter in. So says, welcome to the channel. If you like what we do, give us a wee follow. Subscribe, get the thumbs up and all that stuff, and get in touch with us on our socials down below. But let's crack on and get straight in about the business now. One of the things that I've been noticing about this result, obviously we're deflated and things, and a lot of people are starting to question the team selection, even the tactics and the lineup. I guess that's just natural, mate, whenever you start to sort of have these sort of lacklustre performances. Now, here it is. As we saw the lineup, it pretty much, you'd imagine, wrote itself there. The back 4 into the midfield, McGregor, Oxford, Chamberlain, Negrin, Yang Taneki. Taneki was playing a wee bit better. Maybe is he going to be better coming on as an impact type guy? Rightfully so. We didn't see Maeda and we didn't see Hatate. They were consigned to the bench, and Trinchara starts through the centre on his own again. Looking at the bench, a bit strange. Of course, again, there's these omissions, bit head scratcher. We've got to ask the question. Iheanacho, arguably the most accomplished, complete-looking striker we've got, nowhere to be seen. Joe Mufka, a guy that we were going to spend nearly £4 million for, albeit for a failed medical, is starting to look like a get-out-of-jail-free card there. Do you think that Martin got this one wrong in the starting lineup, mate? Or is that in hindsight coming into play?
The only one I was surprised at was Casper starting. There's been talk, not just after the Stuttgart game, but there has been rumblings, shall we say, over the last few weeks, that the goals he's been conceding, he should be doing better with. We wondered, there was speculation that he's been carrying an injury, he's been getting injections on his shoulder. But we also mentioned the fact that if that was an outfield player going through a run of dodgy games, not just the one or two, but, it was now into about 4, 5, you would expect there to be a bit of chop and change there, just, to kind of try and break that cycle a wee bit. So it was a kind of toss-up whether Sinisalo was going to get the nod. But as it turned out, he went with Casper, and we'll get to his really good save. Don't really think there was anything he could do about the goals, but yeah, it didn't have the worst game, shall we say.
Looking again, talking obviously about that team lineup there, you've mentioned Schmeichel. It was something that, a lot of people didn't want to see. I think it's fair to say, I wouldn't have been mad on after that performance. Obviously, the manager's shown faith in him. Is it now becoming blind faith? Because I will say that, albeit I don't necessarily think that he is, too much he can do about the goals. I would say he plays maybe a hand in the second one with a wee bit of petulance. We'll go on to it, where he kind of boots the ball out of play and it gives away, possession. Obviously, then leads to the possession for Hibs and then the goal. But is Martin, are we really going to have to look at changing here in terms of maybe changing the personnel? And I know it's thin, by the way. I know the options are thin, but are we maybe going to have to, if we really want to dig this one out, we're going to have to look at perhaps a change of formation? We'll get on to that and we think ahead towards the game against Rangers. Maybe a change of personnel, because the magic is starting to rub off a wee bit, is it not? It's starting to sort of disappear.
Yes, but I would also qualify that by saying that I have seen us under Martin play worse than we did last night and win games. I thought we had the momentum coming up to the red card, and I think it was the red card that kind of flipped the game, and the kind of the last 17 minutes. So yeah, we'll kind of get to that once we go through. But yes, as I say, I thought we created some decent chances. We looked to have the momentum, but there was also, some really dodgy moments, not just the goal that they scored. So, it is what it is. As I say, hindsight's a great thing. The starting 11, I think, was probably, other than that, as good as we were going to get. As you say, Tenecti's hitting a wee bit of runner for him. Yang's kind of been up and under a wee bit, but we don't really have the cover over on the right-hand side. The Ox started, and I thought he coasted through the game. And then the subs came on. Well, if Paddy was here, Paddy would tell us about Hatate and Maeda. So, So yeah.
Well, as I say, obviously we normally pick through the action, if you want to call it, and we do one of these sort of looking back shows, but there wasn't very much action, I don't think, necessarily to talk about. It was one of these games that it was quite passive. One of the things that's really sort of got me scratching my head recently has been the drop-off in form. And we sat here and spoke about it. You think when Martin and the boys first came in that first stint, and it was tearing up everything we'd done, and we spoke about how there was playing with an element of freedom, where passes were 1, 2, 3, and you were advancing and getting shots off and loads attacking. For some reason, and I don't know necessarily why, because it's the same guys that are going out under the same coaching staff, we've almost reverted back into this Brendan Rodgers type DNA again. And that's not necessarily to criticise Brendan Rodgers, but the idea of the keep ball thing. And what I noticed as well, very prominent in the game, and a lot of people are complaining about it, and this is me just picking the guy out, but the pointing, the directing of the traffic from Cal McGregor is fully back in full swing, and it's slowing the game down. I look at Oxlade Chamberlain, And yeah, the game passed him by. But there was times when he was on the ball and he was moving it quickly. He was taking a touch and moving it. 1-2 touch stuff. Everybody else in the pitch, not so much. They were wanting to get their foot in the ball. They want to carry it. And, particularly Cal McGregor, he's pointing. He's almost spoon feeding the passages of play, the moves to everybody. There's an element of predictability, excuse me.
Yeah.
An element of predictability around our play at this moment in time. And I'm just concerned, looking at the length of games that we've got ahead, mate, that's going to creep in. Why is this? What has suddenly happened to this side that we look completely and utterly bereft of creativity?
Probably because we are bereft of creativity. We don't have the playmakers. You've got no Jota in there. As I say, when was the last time we had a decent right winger? Nicholas Kuhn, sold him, didn't replace him. That's the thing. We've got no outlet on the wide areas. Now, we've talked previously about, maybe having the likes of Kieran playing kind of higher up with Sarachi in behind him. We're as fans, we're trying to find things that we can do. Now we criticise Wilfred for throwing 11 names up in the air and see where they landed, and that's where they would be. That's where you would be playing for the day. But we don't have enough depth in the squad to say we can rotate. As you say, you mentioned a couple of names. You could add to that Balakishwa. We haven't seen him since he came back from AFCON. Luke McCowan hasn't really been getting many minutes on the park either in the last few weeks. So, again, you've got to look and say, Martin is really, dealing with a very, very tight-knit group. And out with those, the boy Arthur that came on, obviously after the red card, I thought he did okay. He didn't do anything, hugely wrong. So it'll be interesting to see come next Saturday who takes the place at Ibrox. As you say, do we go for a change of formation, knowing that Trusty's not available? So we'll see what happens. But as I say, those guys on the periphery who just aren't getting any minutes, they must know at the minute their cards are kind of marked.
Oh, absolutely. If we get back then to the action, or the lack thereof, as we say, I think the pace of the game started off. It wasn't by any stretch of imagination energetic or forward thinking. We didn't necessarily put them under too much pressure. We had the control of the ball. Teams seemed quite more than happy to do that. And we're 20 odd minutes in. And then, of course, you've got to say, against the run of play, Hibs score. And it is the first attempt into the box. Now, there's twofold there. We know that we're problematic when it comes to cross balls in. The defence, once again, don't cover themselves in glory. The man gets between our two centre halves. But I think at that point as well,
he loses his man at the back post. That's he's ball watching,
And as not to sort of hang a guy out to dry, that has also became quite common. There's been a few goals now at that back post where the defensive side of Tenecki has been lacking, but that's an all-over defensive problem. But Tenecki, again, has been identified because he's unfortunately one of the guys that's in that area or not in that area, and he's not following up in the man. But I think at that point, it's just more about desire. The guy wants it more than Celtic. It's a good header. It's a bullet header. There's nothing the goalkeeper can do about it. Before you know it, you are 1-0 down after the best bit of 20 minutes or so. And it just drained a wee bit of the life out of Celtic Park. The atmosphere in general wasn't too bad. We'll talk about that as things go on. Obviously, as news started to filter through about what was happening elsewhere, that really spiked the noise levels and the sort of, enthusiasm around. And at that point, I actually thought that's going to be a catalyst. It's going to somehow drive us on. Then, of course, with a few stoppages and with some other stuff, and it just sapped the momentum out of the game, and we found ourselves back to where we were once that excitement had passed. But it's another simple goal, mate. It's another simple goal, and this is something that's been all over Celtic's DNA. That teams, no matter who they are, no matter where they are on the table, seem to want it more than our guys. And that's something that you can't train. You've either got that or you don't.
Yeah, I mean it's become the norm now. Every team, if they're doing their homework prior to coming to play against Celtic, whether it's home or away, they will know that we are at our most vulnerable. Just coming in, getting a ball into the area as quick as possible. We cannot defend crosses. We're not picking up man for man or however the kind of formation or kind of just how they're picking up in the defence. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Hibs goal was because of a very quick ball in. Our goal, Nygren's goal, was very much the same. It was, rather than dancing about on the sides and moving it in as they were for the rest of the game, it was just a quick down the line and first ball across. Nygren's obviously, as he has been so many times this season, right place, right time, puts it in the back of the net. But then we kind of stopped playing that way and got back to passy across and back, as you say. It looked very much as if it was a kind of Brendan Rodgers tactic class there, which surprised me, coming out in the second half at one each. I would have thought he would have said, no, look, that's where we've got a bit of success. We've managed to get in behind the Hibs defence. Let's keep going this way and try and get the ball in that wee bit earlier.
Sorry.
That's all right. We'll talk about how many times Kvanchara during the game. I really feel for the guy, because he had half chances. 9 times out of 10, he's getting his body in front of a defender. Defenders get his arms wrapped round him in the box and never ever seems to get any fouls for it. I don't know why specifically. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they're not. And I know he's got his arms out and he's using his body well and stuff like that, but that doesn't give the defender or the opposition player the right to drag him about the place and not get anything for it. But yeah, as I say, I was disappointed that, having seen how we were able to score that goal, we just then went back to the way we had been playing up to that. I think there was a stat probably just after Motherwell scored their goal that up to that point, I think we'd had 10 shots and none of them were on target, which again is something that we're guilty of this season.
The shooting was largely terrible.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've mentioned the goal and stuff for ourselves, which is a good one. But you also, at the top of the show, you pointed out quite rightly, Kasper Schmeichel, a guy that many of us think probably shouldn't have been in the squad, and I would be happy to prescribe to that. I think that he was very lucky. I think that was maybe an old pals act, maybe a senior guy not wanting to drop him and all that kind of usual managerial stuff that you get. But yeah, at 1-0 down, we don't look as if we're threatening, and we'll talk about Chinchara because I want to go into that about how we didn't really have much from an attacking standpoint. Really, we're kind of largely toothless, and I do feel to an extent it was fighting a losing battle. But Hibs nearly 2 up. Martin Boyle's got to score, and it's a great save for Kasper Schmeichel. And one of the few things up until our goal that really lifted the crowd and got people onside, I say onside, got us kind of saying, "Wait, here we go." That's something to get, and about. And again, this is the rock in the hard place. We select any Celtic player. Kasper Schmeichel had an absolute stinker, right? All week, we know that, and he's been up and down. But he's had these huge moments, and there's been a lot of players like that have had absolute stinkers. Look at Yang, for example, some great games, great appearances, plenty of stinkers as well. It feels like most players in the Celtic team, you could interchange them if you had options based on that same argument, mate. Sorry, on you go. I'm just saying that there you could. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not weighing myself here.
That's all right. Just you get a fisherman's friend in about you. The thing about, as you say, the Martin Boyle effort, one long ball over the top of Liam Scales. Now, one shouldn't ever be getting a ball from where the midfielder played it up and over the top, and Scales, I don't think he misjudges it. I think he's kind of on the way back, but he's not positioned correctly to deal with that ball in the air. Comes over the top of him. Boyle runs onto it really well. And yes, as you say, Casper's got to come out, does what Casper has done throughout his career, like Dad. He managed to get, first of all, the hand to it to knock it away.
Yeah.
That if he'd misjudged that, that's a penalty and potentially Casper's off. But he gets it right. And then he does, as I say, what Casper has done is he gets up and he makes himself big, saves it with his chest, and out it goes. So that is, what you can generally rely on Casper doing. 9 times out of 10, he will save, as you say, in big moments like that. Others, the Stuttgart goals, as we talked about when we did the kind of come down on that one, down to either side where he's struggling with this injury and he's not getting hands to it, or it's going through him, and it's the Casper roller coaster, really. The ups and downs of a guy when you're the last line of defence, literally. These kind of moments tend to be magnified more than if somebody had made an error in the middle of the park or something like that. But yeah, as I say, the ball over the top of Liam was far too easy. And as I say, Casper came out, dealt with it well, kept us in the game, because I think if we'd gone 2 down at that point, I didn't really see us coming back from that at all.
Yeah, and the thing is we talk about going down, and that's been a recurring theme. It was actually the 4th time in the last 5 games that Celtic conceded first. That's just the way our season's going, mate.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the positive in the goal, and again, it's another guy that's worth talking about. Really, I don't splitting the fan base. We sat here and we spoke about it. Nigrin, tell you what, see, for any of the criticism because he's levied his way, ourselves included.
Yep.
Where would we be without his goals and his input this season?
Absolutely.
Because
18 goals.
Similarly to the Hibs goal, he wants it. He's in the right place. He attacks it, and he nods us in. 1 each. Perfect.
Yep.
And what a time to score. It's almost the perfect time to score. It's the old cliche. It's an absolute perfect time to score. And I felt at that point, getting down the tunnel, 1 each, you're like, right, okay, reset. It can't get any worse. It can't be as bad as that in the second half. Obviously, we'll talk about how that eventually pans out. Certain decisions in that game change it. But he's the guy that attacks it. Yep. And that just goes back to, it's the one point where I really felt like we tried to attack and do our thing and flash a dangerous ball across the box.
Early ball.
Yes. What also has frustrated me is we've became quite a wee bit dependent on going down the flanks. And we know by default that wingers can be quite hot and cold. Again, insert cliche here, right? But the one time it works was he attacks it. And that then comes back to the Finchara thing. We've been trying to sort of, the days of us trying to work and burst through and cut teams through the middle and work and alter patterns of play seem to be gone. There was numerous times where there was balls on the edge of the box. I'm thinking, just hit it. There's an opportunity. Take a shot. Yes, some of the shooting was absolutely garbage, but we're not sitting doing that. We're not taking chances. And as for Tunchara, again, I'll ask you, because this will just be in this entire time, does he need somebody playing off him? And again, it goes back to this idea, a change of formation, because I like the work rate for the big man, but I'm still seeing the same issues that I had with Adamida. Now, of course, Adamida rubbed my face in it and scored more goals, obviously. But what I mean by that is he's coming deep. He's trying to join up the game. He's trying to get the ball early, pass it to somebody, and then move to say, right, I want involved. He's coming back and he is chipping in. He's winning a lot of fouls. He's always got a defender or somebody hanging off him with a cape, and he's getting battled and battered. But at the same time as well, those are good, and he distracts defenders and occupies defenders. But there's still nothing there to show for it, and I do feel a wee bit sorry for him. But his currency that he's going to be judged on are going to be goals, mate. And at this moment in time, I'm certainly not turning on him, just as an observation. He doesn't look like a guy that's going to have an Adamida and score us 6, 7, 8 goals that are going to drive us to this title. It almost looks as if he's allergic to face the goal. He's always got his back to goal. He's always vertical and falling onto somebody. I just want him to maybe even change the way that he plays. We always hear about this blistering speed and instinctiveness that he's meant to possess. Then do that. I want to see him doing what Nygren does when the ball flashes across the box.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had one kind of decent chance that he kind of made really a cock up. He didn't get the ball out of his feet quick enough. He could have put that away if he'd been a wee bit more composed. But in general, we talked about our build-up play, and how we like to go down the wings, right? Go back to last season when you had Maeda firing down the left-hand side, you had Nicholas running down the right-hand side and getting balls in early. So Adam Ida, as you mentioned, was getting the ball played in front of him when he's facing the goal. The difference with Kvanchara, stroke, anybody else that you want to put in there when we start to make substitutions, is because the build-up play down the wings is so slow, we're not getting the main striker facing the goal. Yeah. He's waiting, trying to hold his position, and by that time a defender's getting goal side of him, making sure he's not getting in there. Yeah. So yes, Kvanchara, he had a decent header, wee bit off target, but again, it was kind of more the ball came in, he had to kind of try and get his head back to it. But he got a header away. But as I say, the thing for me is the amount of times that you'll see a defender wrapping his arms round him, and just bring him to the ground. And he doesn't seem to get as many fouls as he should get, because probably a lot of them are in, as Kieran says, when the opposition are holding you and the ref says that's okay. Now, when that's in the box, that's a clear, it's a 50-50 decision. Does the ref think there's enough in that dragging the player down to give a penalty? And obviously, as we've seen up to this point, the refs are thinking, no, there's not enough in that. They're all going to, grapple with each other. We'll get onto the Liam Scales one, I'm sure, when we talk about that. But, that's something more general in football. When you start penalising all this grabbing and hauling in the area, whether it's from corners or set pieces and stuff like that, defenders will start to keep their hands to themselves a wee bit more, try and use their bodies a wee bit rather than the grabbing. But yeah, I think generally Kvanchara has been a wee bit unlucky that we've not been giving him as good service as some of our previous strikers. Yeah, certainly Kyogo. Look at Kyogo. The service he got. It was get that ball ahead, and Kyogo would just run onto it time and time again. Even going back to kind of Moussa Dembele, get the ball in front of him, let him attack a defender, or get those 1-on-1 chances. So as I say, Kvanchara's been a wee bit unlucky in that regard, that we're not getting him those same kind of opportunities in service.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talk about as the game progresses on. When it comes to, we felt that, well, at least I felt that the manager, the selection back, it was so predictable. And then we eventually get the standardised changes. With the 60 minutes, Oxlade Chamberlain, I think the game passes him by. I don't think he was as effective as we would have maybe liked him to have been. I felt that I would have expected more out of Cal McGregor with Oxlade Chamberlain being there. but it still, to me, just looked as if Cal McGregor had his fingers in all the pies and was trying to direct the traffic and spreading himself thin and ultimately becoming not very effective. So he changes the Ox for Daizen Maeda, and Chinchara comes on for Hatate. Obviously, you can interchange the positions of them based on where they would normally play. But at that point, I'm thinking to myself, right, that's actually not bad subs, right? Because Oxlade-Chamberlain's ran his race. He clearly doesn't think much of McCowan, as I says, and Bernardo, a bit of a head scratcher. Again, with the situation with him, he plays him in Europe. He's not great. He's not disastrous. But either way, he opts with Hatate, and he's pumped to back him. He came out and he spoke about him, saying he's supporting him and things. So you can maybe understand why he does it. But I think, right, okay, makes sense, because there's a lot of times where the Hibs goalkeeper was getting the ball back, and I thought, we just need to press him, advance the press, move forward, squeeze them, and we'll get this goal. So looking at Daizen Maeda coming on, that looked like the right solution there. And for a very, very short period of time, you get a bit of that for Daizen Maeda. But then, as has happened, the game just fades out for him. And to an extent, fades out for Hatate. Out of the two, Hatate, for me, was marginally better because there was points where he'd done it. But he also looked very lightweight, and he looked like there was no fight in him. Disappointing. Two subs that, wind the clock back to last season, even the start of this season, probably changed the game.
Yeah.
Even the guys that were used to expecting something out of it, it's not quite happening, is it?
No, again, we've mentioned, we've lost count of times we've mentioned that they're just not impacting games the same way this season at all. Neither of the two of them. It's sad to see, really, because we know that they are both quality players, but there just seems something is just not right there. With the two of them, you can use the terms, they've tuned out, they've clocked off, they've just lost any kind of desire. If you can put your finger on it, put it in the comments. Hatate's had far more poor games than good. Yes, you can see, again, he's had those standout moments. But again, you've seen him where he's been absolutely unplayable, as has Daizen. I'm a guy who absolutely loves what Daizen has done for this team in the time that he's been here, but just this season, the two of them are absolutely struggling to death. And again, surprising given the fact that Japan will be going to the World Cup. And if they're thinking, our current form's going to get us starting in that, no chance. They'll be warming a bench for the entire tournament, I would think.
I won't even get near the flight. I think that discussion really only applies to Daizen Maeda, because he's always been a bit of a mainstay. Ryo Hatate can just forget it. What surprises me more about those two guys is that I would expect them to be playing for the move, as you would normally say, if anything. Now, people don't like that, playing for a move, but it's pretty clear that they're not going to be at Celtic next season.
No.
So see if we get something out of them because they want to get out. I'm all right with that. I'm fine with it. But there's not even that, mate. There's not even that. And then, of course, we then try to push things on. We have to make another substitution. We bring on James Forrest again. No disrespect to James Forrest. Love the guy. But we bring on James Forrest in place of Taneki. Again, he just had a bit of a sort of, golden deceiver. They just sort of flattered to deceive. There wasn't really too much going on there as well. And then, of course, we sacrifice Yang. We have to, because of the first major VAR incident in the game largely peters out. But let's talk about that VAR incident, right? Let's talk about Auston Trusty. You can always direct and point and hang somebody out to dry and blame somebody for something. In your opinion, does Auston Trusty, aside how shite we were, by the way, does Auston Trusty, ultimately that moment, cost Celtic the game?
For me, yes. That's it. Just a straight yes. I think, as I say, we had the momentum going into the last 17 minutes. If it had stayed at 11 versus 11, I think we would have scored and won that game.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is the momentum at that point for the 60 onwards. We know what happens with Rangers. As we say, we bring on the two guys. We're trying to push it. The atmosphere in the stadium's up. There's a wee bit of crest of a wave. And then obviously, when that happens, there's a period in between about 65 to that happening where there's just a slight lull.
Yeah,
there's a slight lull. The intensity levels just drop. We don't take advantage of that hot streak, the atmosphere. And again, that's exactly one of the reasons why we should be trying to get the fan groups back in that corner, making the noise, because we talk about the fans sucking the ball into the net and lifting everybody and giving you that wee bit extra in the legs. It's cliche, but you felt it whenever, albeit that it was a result of scores coming through, people are hearing in their ear, listening to the radio, scores elsewhere. But it lifted it and you noticed it and it made such a difference. But as I say, there's a bit of a lull, and then of course it makes it worse in terms of this red card. Now, people are saying, I've seen a lot of people saying, when have you ever seen somebody getting sent off for something? I totally agree. You see, fisticuffs and pushing and shoving and handbags or whatever you want to call it all the time between defenders. That's what they do. They're slapping at each other, pushing each other, pulling, stopping, calling back a free kick or a corner, getting taken 2-3 times to tell the two same guys to stop it. This has become something that it's been very common with Auston Trusty, and I'm genuinely surprised it's taken us long to get stung by it.
Yeah,
we always talk about giving referees an excuse, giving them an easy decision to make, and that's what he does. And is it the worst thing in the world? No. But he does come down with a fair bit of force, and you can see there's a bit of aggression in it. It's irrelevant if it's going to break the guy's arm or just barely scratch him. It's the fact that he lashes out, and that's it. And as I say, he just gives him an easy option to make, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. I would say the thing that annoyed me more than Trusty's actions. I was annoyed at Trusty's actions because yes, if he pulls his arm away, and the guy falls over because he's pulled his arm away, that's fine. But yes, the strike down with the arm, you're not going to make any kind of referee. You're not going to make friends with the referee because you've made that. It doesn't go near his face. The guy goes down like a ton of bricks, whatever. That's fine. He's still woof. But what annoyed me, and Martin mentioned in his post-match, was that the referee was going over towards the two players to just say, look, I've seen that, and I want you to split up and leave it.
Yeah.
But it's VAR that gets in his ear. And VAR says, no, we want you to come and see this on the monitor. So the referee's making a decision, and then VAR are saying, you've made the wrong decision there. Now, up to that point, the referee was just advancing towards the two players. We don't know what he's going to say to them or whatever, but VAR decide at that point to get involved. So that's a strange one. VAR aren't there to referee the game. And if they're looking at something and saying, oh, I don't agree with the referee's decision, well, that's just, how they see that. If they think the referee hasn't seen something, oh, there's something happened behind your back, we need to bring it to your attention, that's fine. But the referee comes over, he's made a decision. Now, as he says himself to Martin and Neill, I was going to come across and just have words with him. I didn't see, the strike down. If VAR have said, oh no, we've seen this because Trusty's got his body and you're behind him, whatever. But again, this is where people get so upset about VAR. They're not there to referee games. They're there to make sure that a clear and obvious error, I think, is the terminology that should be used here.
Yeah.
But if they're looking at that saying, no, we think there's a different decision, then that's them really refereeing the game, and that shouldn't be what VAR's there for. And if you go on to Ali McCoy's talks about it today, the BBC pundits after the game talk about it. You know, all these clips are available on the internet, and there's nobody really that kind of agrees with VAR. Everybody says that's not something that VAR should be getting involved in. It's not that kind of decision. So again, what we're looking for is consistency. Now, we know there was a controversial VAR decision right at the end of the Livy game. And again, you know, this is something that went the opposite way. It was something that VAR probably should have got involved in because the referee made a clear error. But, you know, again,
absolutely.
You know, the VAR up in Scotland is absolutely crap.
Yeah,
and the people making these decisions don't seem to have a kind of consistent set of rules to deal with.
Absolutely, and that is the thing, is it feels as if depending on what the direction and strength of the wind is on any given week, you might get something there. So it's definitely a fast, and there's other ones that we'll talk about in a minute or two. But for there on, hamstrings is we have to make it now. I had to be thinking about it at the time, and I thought to myself, we bring on young Ben Arthur. You know, I jokingly said many podcasts ago that the only way that guy plays is if Celtic end up with 4 broken legs in the back line. Apparently not. It's just enter Auston Trusty. But it kind of forces our hand now.
Yeah.
There was part of me at that point that felt, why don't we just go fucking mental? And why don't we bring on Junior Adamu? Let's just bring him on. He's got a set of wheels on him, it would appear. Yang's coming off. He's not really done much. Why not? Let's just roll the dice. You'll be less criticised, falling on your sword, but going out, trying to go for it. You know, hammer and tong.
Yep.
We bring on Benjamin Arthur, and I think if we're being honest, mate, it's probably fairly obvious as to why it happens. Because his first game can't be at Ibrox. He needs that time to at least get used in some way in a competitive game to the guys around him. Form some sort of, you know, slapdash relationship or understanding in real time, not in training time, with his fellow defenders. And I think and I think that's quite simply why he comes on. He wasn't particularly overly tested. He does look like quite a big strapping lad. He looks quite athletic. He looks quite mobile. Who knows? We didn't get to see anything there. But it's just disappointing that it's twofold. We end up having to throw a young guy into that. Massive pressure on him. But again, hey, if you want to be at Celtic, you want to play for the teams like ourselves, you're going to have to take these chances. And it also limits our actual chances of maybe bringing on somebody who will influence the game, because a defender's not going to do that, are they?
No. I have to say, going back to the Adamu one, I was surprised when I saw Maeda coming on rather than Adamu. I would have thought at that point, you know, knowing that Maeda hasn't been in a great run of form. Yes, he's fast. Yes, he'll go and he'll try and press the goalkeeper and stuff like that. That's fine. But going back to the Adamu one, when you're looking at, we need a goal, I would have thought, you know, he would have been the sticky in and moving on, you know, to say, yeah, let's see if we can get him the ball and get him a chance to get shots away and whatever. You know, Maeda's, you know, lacking confidence, lacking whatever you want to kind of say is, you know, so I have to say I would have went for Adamu coming on at that point rather than Dyson.
Yeah, I think as well. As I say, with the likes of guys like Adamu and stuff, you can give them a dry run, and we'll talk ever so briefly about what may or may not happen.
You weren't getting a dry run last night looking at the weather, but I know what you mean.
There's certain guys that can come in and do that. I think Benjamin Negrin's a necessity starter. He's a guy that he has to be playing because he needs that bit of time. Absolutely. And albeit he still comes into a game where there's a level of pressure because Celtic need to win that. They need to. They can't lose it. Unfortunately, it doesn't go that way for it, as we all know. And of course, disappointing. The goal is a good strike. We'll come back to what's the origins of this. Well, it's just, again, Celtic are very passive. They let Hibs pretty much at their own half cruise through, and it's a good shot off. It is a good shot off. Criticism of the goalkeeper, I don't know, is he maybe partly sighted through the bodies in the box.
No, there's three. When the ball breaks to the edge of the area, I think there's three Celtic defenders that could have tried to kind of like throw a leg at it, try and get some sort of block on it. But 3 defenders, and it's by the time it comes through them, Casper's that unsighted. It's past him before he sees it kind of nestling in the back of the net. So,
I mean, as not to look sorry for a reason to flog Casper, because he does make a good save in the game, as we well know. I do think he needs to hold. There's a moment of petulance from him where the ball's at the back, and I've seen mixed reviews. Some people are saying he doesn't have much of an option to make the pass, and you've got Cal McGregor doing the sort of directing the traffic, wanting to know where it goes, and he decides, fuck this. And he just shells it out the pitch. I mean, it's aimed at nobody. I don't know who he's meant to be aiming at. It's just out the park.
Yeah.
But then ultimately gives the possession back to Hibs and the chance to attack us at such a late point in the game. Even in that sense, when he shells the ball at the park, you cannot be losing possession through petulance and just booting it because the clock is ticking. Yeah. And again, as well, we want to talk about VAR and talk about referees and assistants and stuff like that. Yep. The reality is we end up with, in my opinion, less time than probably should have been added on. But hey, that's another story for our day. Yeah. We find ourselves 2-1 down, and there's not too much that we can do. There's really not much that we can do for there on in, and we just stumble to another defeat.
Yeah.
But are we fortunate that results elsewhere end in a draw where, do you know what, we can leapfrog back up into second?
Yep.
But it's nip and tuck, mate. Nothing's a given. And here we've got Motherwell breathing down our neck as well. 4 points behind.
Yeah, looking at this weekend's fixtures in general, and probably over maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, honest opinion, I think the team that's playing the best football at this moment in time are Motherwell. Motherwell have really just. I know we talked about Hearts and their very good recruitment over the course of this season. Motherwell have really put it together on much less money. Have largely gone under the radar for the quality of football that they're playing at the moment. They're getting, some big scores. We talked about Mashwinishi, potentially that should have really been a target for us at the start of the transfer window, and we just never went there. But you look at that, Motherwell, are, you wouldn't say totally out of it. There is a bit more for them to make up in terms of the 3 teams above them. But you look at the way they play, and I would say they have the potential to take points off of all 3, rivals there. Really, really good team to watch playing, free scoring, and that's it. We just need to make sure that, again, like we talked about at the Stuttgart game, it's done, put it behind you, focus on the next one. The way leg in Stuttgart is a dead rubber for me. So, I think you'll probably see some of our fringe players there, knowing that, we've got probably, to this point, the biggest game of the season coming up next Sunday.
Give Sanasawa a game, maybe he'll surprise us amongst others.
Well, can he be any worse than Casper was in the first leg?
Highly doubt it. But I've brought up a table for there. Let's have a look. Now, you stated quite openly, you believe when this top 6 split comes, there's points to be dropped everywhere.
Yeah.
If you look at
even Falkirk, are a good team as well.
And I mean, if you look there at the form of all the teams, there is normally in the normal runnings, you look at these tables at this point of the year, and it's just blocks of green for certain teams. Usually Celtic and Rangers, blocks of green, and everything else. It's very, very patchy all over it. So but that is a concern. We've got Aberdeen to take care of. And then we get the game against Rangers.
Yep.
They just keep come thick and fast. There's no easy games. Then you look at this split. This is the way it's going to finish up. Falkirk are a difficult game, I imagine. We're away to them. You've got to be away to Hibs. You've got to welcome Motherwell, I'd say. We obviously know we've got Rangers. You've got Hearts again.
Yeah.
You know, take your pick, mate. And I think the most...
Twists and turns, you know. It really is... you know, I wouldn't like to be doing the pools coupons these days, you know, to try and get the kind of perfect combination and stuff like that. I think, as I say, I don't see any of, you know, the top four going. You know, I'll say it again. You know, going the remainder of the season undefeated. There will be points dropped here and there. So some surprising. You know, I mean, as I say, you know, nobody could have predicted that Rangers were going to drop points last night. Nobody, guarantee. You know, even the most optimistic.
I think what's surprising here, when you look at this, right now, obviously we have to mention it because it is relevant. The Wilfred Nancy period, undoubtedly, there's no excusing it. It could ultimately be the thing that cost us, right?
Yep.
And again, hey, who's that come back to? Comes back
board.
to this board that are failing us, right? That was a bananas appointment at a strange time, right? Yep. Absolutely wild. Totally mad as a box of frogs. Like crazy to pick a guy out of relative obscurity and expect him to have that sort of plug and play man management thing. But it's consigned to history. There's nothing we can do with it, right? But I think that's what you think. That's where we're, it sounds daft, lucky that we're even in the position we're in.
Yeah.
Look at this here. 4 losses Hearts, 2 for Rangers, 7 for us, 3 for Motherwell. You know, we're quite fortunate. They're dropping points elsewhere, but they're draws. You know, it's mental, mate, that we have lost 7 games at this period, and we're obviously it talks about everybody bhoys, but it just shows you, mate, like that those 7 draws could be absolutely majorly costly. There's a slice of fortune that's draws for Motherwells and draws for Rangers. Otherwise, mate, this could be absolutely brutal. Worse than us.
Well, I mean, you know, again, you know, they had the Russell Martin experiment, which went totally wrong. There was, you know, I'm quite sure there would be Rangers podcasts for that period of time, all calling, you know, as we are, honest opinion, saying, you know, this guy is just not the manager that we need at the club. Bearing in mind when Martin finished his first stint, you know, he'd clawed back an 8-point gap on Hearts. He left the club, you know, just, you know, almost itchy peachy with them. The Nancy thing, as you say, you know, a total bananas appointment, but also because it was the wrong time of the season to bring in somebody that was going to be experimental and wanting to bring in his own you know, kind of brand of football and stuff. Who knows if they'd brought him in during a pre-season, you know, during a summer break, time to work with the players, time to make sure that all these star players were fit and available to him and stuff like that. There was just too many red flags there that said this isn't ever going to turn out well. And as much as, you know, we wanted to get behind the guy, and as soon as you saw his style of football on the park, you were saying this is never ever going to be suitable for Celtic. You know, the kind of going 3 at the back and, you know, interchangeable players here, there and everywhere. You know, it was just really you know, mind-boggling what we were watching at the time. So as you say, to be still with it in our own hands going into, you know, the last 11 games of the season is a testament to what Martin has done twice here. And we just need to, you know, keep the fingers crossed that we will start to get a wee bit of luck. You know, as I say, until it's mathematically impossible for Rangers or Hearts to catch us, then, you know, that'll be us. I'll keep the faith and, you know, just, you know, make sure that we give them as much support. Yes, nobody's under any illusions that we're watching great football and we're winning games by the margins that we've won. But as you'll hear all the pundits saying, is league winning teams find ways to win games, pick up points here, there, and everywhere. Whether it's a draw that you salvaged, whether it's a late win that you've salvaged, but 11 games to go, remember that it's not done and dusted until, as I say, the mathematics tell us.
Well, here's the thing, just on that, just to finish up on talking about the game at least. You mentioned about it's not exactly the exciting playing football we're used to seeing. And Martin Neill has been, excuse me, a wee bit criticised for some of his takes and things that he said recently. And what he said yesterday didn't exactly, make people particularly on side or full of confidence. And again, I just want you reading on. It says, in brief, it's a setback. That's all it is. We're still in the race. There's not much room for error, but we can still fight back. As we says, as unlikely as it may well seem at this moment in time, there's still key games that we could win. Most notably, you're looking obviously at Motherwell, Hearts, Rangers. They are the must win. They're all must wins, but they're the ones. They're the real major threats, right? Because equally well, I think they can take points off each other. So there is that there. Many variables still, twists and turns. But this, I thought we were absolutely terrific. The players put heart and soul into the game. No complaints on that side whatsoever. I mean, I love Martin Neill to bits, but I can't prescribe to that, mate. I don't think that team were terrific, mate.
No, listen, that is just going back to old school manager tactics when he's talking to the media, right? You remember, well, you might not remember because I'm older than you are, but when Gordon Strachan was talking to the media, when Martin was hearing his first, going back to all these great managers, they would never ever come out and slate their team. On occasion they would turn around and say, disappointed, we need to do things better, this, that, and the next thing. But other than Brendan's Honda Civics comment, you don't really get too many Celtic managers that will come out and absolutely pillory their team, because that does nothing. I'm sure when Martin gets back into that dressing room, what he says away from the cameras to the team will be entirely different. So I'm not going to judge him on what he says to the media, right? Martin's too old and he's too canny to give them any kind of ammunition to use against them, right? He said since he came in the first time, oh, we're behind and it's going to be a struggle and this, that, and the next thing. That's the line that he's taken, and quite rightly so. As I say, until he gets to a situation where, we get to, the last 3 or 4 games and maybe things have changed a wee bit and, we've maybe hit the top of the league or we've fallen away, however it goes, I think Martin is going to be kind of very consistent in what he says. Again, he talked about Kasper. Did you talk about Kasper's individual game against Stuttgart? No, he talked about Kasper's, what he'd done in the whole time he'd been at the club, because he's not going to come out and throw him under the bus in front of the television camera. So I don't really prescribe to making decisions on Martin and his press conferences. As I say, I think he's canny enough that he will know how to get the best out. Yeah, he'll have told them a new one in the dressing room. Absolutely. The Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment, kicking boots about and busting Beckham over the eye and stuff like that. What he does in the dressing room away from the cameras is entirely different to what you'll see from Martin when he gets that mic handed to him and pundits asking him questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've wrapped up the game. We'll have a wee look towards the midweek game and what that might mean for the game at Ibrox. But what we'll do is, before we kick on, you can take a wee back seat here. Obviously, this is not necessarily your gig to talk here, if you will. But yes, I want to address something, because anybody that follows Celtic World Order podcast, some other podcasts, may well have seen a picture that was posted from the match yesterday. And it's needless to say that, as expected in the current climate that we find ourselves in, it raised some eyebrows. It got a wee bit of traction. It got a lot of traction, a lot of negative traction. And also, I thank those who saw what it was and also were supportive of myself and the other people that were in said picture. What I want to say about this is to give people the facts and the context, because I think the one thing I would say is context is king with all these things. Now, people use the term about the optics and how things look and all that. Listen, I get that, but we sit here every other day, every other week, and we sit and we give our honest views, unfiltered, and we tell you what we think. One thing that we never do, and I would never do, and nobody on this podcast would do, is tell you what to do, is to tell you how to support Celtic or otherwise. Our message, if you've been watching us, a lot and recently, when these things have come up, is do what you feel comfortable with doing. Support Celtic how you support Celtic. Now, obviously, because of the whole thing with the collective and that's been going on, it's been, in my opinion, sensationalised that me, it's the picture, in case you haven't seen, it's Quinny, Paul John Dykes, myself, and Tony Haggerty, right? That we, or at least four of us, are somehow figureheads or main players or representative of the Celtic collective. And that photo is damaging to the Celtic collective. Now, just for complete and utter clarity, we've said this before and folk have asked us previously, we were DMing us, asking stuff, updates and that. We said this, we, Celtic World Order, myself, Paddy, Stevie, obviously you're new to the party here, we are not part of the Celtic collective. We are not players in the Celtic collective. We don't have any skin in the game with the Celtic collective. We don't have any influence in the Celtic collective. We're not on any board of whatever it is, like a sort of those that make decisions. We are nothing in terms of that, okay? We were one of the original signatories of the 7-point letter that was given at fan dissatisfaction. We fully support that. So what people might say is, but you are part of the collective because they represent loads of fans. That may be true within the reasons of our name was on that letter, but that is as far as it goes. Now, if there's any confusion there, and I saw today that Paul John Dykes, who was involved in a capacity for this sort of fan media side of things, decided and says, well, it might be better for me to take an official step back from that because I don't want to dilute and divert attention for the efforts that are doing it. So if it makes people comfortable, I'm happy to say the exact same thing, but I'm not really stepping away from anything. Celtic World Order aren't really stepping away from anything because we were never deep in anyway to begin with. So I hope that makes sense there, okay? We don't want anybody to become a sideshow to what's a bigger overarching issue and call for change, all right? So if me saying that we are no longer associated, that's fine, because as I say, I'll be honest with you, I genuinely don't have a hand, or I never had a hand in the collective. I couldn't even tell you who the main players are. That's 100% honest. I don't know who's on the board or whatever it's called, the steering group. I don't know who they are. I've never known who they are. So that shows you how much involvement I have with the collective, okay? And another thing as well, it was getting put out there, and that's the one thing that slightly disappointed me. The reaction to it, I felt, was, hanging people out to dry without the context. And as I say, in this idea that we are these leading lights and we've let the collective down. We've sat here time and time again, myself, Stevie, Paddy, and we have talked about things that have happened with the collective, and we've gave you our own individual opinions, and at times we've disagreed with each other, and we've also disagreed with the things that are being suggested. Now, if we were, as people are trying to claim, these big players and these big people that are so ingrained with the collective, we wouldn't sit there and say, they've suggested this, but I don't agree with that. I wouldn't do that. It's not for me. We wouldn't do that. We would just go, this is what you need to do, and tell you, toe the line. We've never done that. We've always says, X, for example, not another penny. Yep, do you know what? I understand it's hard. I will not be buying merchandise and pies and stuff at the game. I'll not be doing that. We've says, that's our choice. But if you want to go support Celtic your own way, we've always sat on that balance of do what's right for you, and please don't criticise other people if they decide to do something that you don't want, okay? So I just want to be clear with that. Secondly, as well, talking about context, and context is king. People see a picture of 4 guys, and I understand that we're on here and we're talking about change and wanting to change the board and all that kind of stuff, all right? We were in a box. people see that and they say corporate box, hospitality, and they instantly think you are there at invite of the club. Absolutely untrue. Couldn't be any further from the truth. We were there, or I was there at least, by invite from Paul John Dykes, which was extended via a friend of his, who you will know is David Lowe. Now, David Lowe's done shows with him, and if you know your history, as I say, David Lowe's a man who was an instrumental player in the original Fergus McCann takeover. Undoubted credentials as a Celtic man. And that happens to be the way that he watches games. That's his season ticket and has been since prior to COVID. And he invited us along. So that's why we were there with a man who is also at this current time, similar to what the Celtic Trust are doing, trying to do exactly what we are doing, push for meaningful change at board level by getting shareholders together and trying to get a stakeholding in Celtic where they can have representation on the board. That's what he's working on. So if anything, the company of the man that we were in is actually more of a thorn or more of a threat to that Celtic board than the likes of myself or Stevie sitting here wagging a finger and saying that we don't like them. Because he's a guy that's trying to influence real change. So that's who we were with. And as we say, paid for by him at the start of the season. That's his season book. So that's just for clarity. We were not there at the club's invitation. We didn't cross paths with any member of the Celtic hierarchy or anything else. We walked up the stairs into his box, sat there, watched the game, had something to eat. People are saying, oh, and free drinking, all that. Newsflash, the majority didn't drink, if that makes you feel better. And there's also this funny thing about prawn sandwiches. They don't exist. I'll just tell you that. They don't exist. So, yes, sorry if people didn't like that and thought it gave the wrong message. But as I say, I can't make people think what they want to think about things. That's entirely up to you. As I say, I'll never tell you and wag a finger at you. I'll always sit here and try to have balanced adult conversations about things. That's what we always try to do here. And we always try to look at things with balance. A lot we don't agree with, whether it's, yes, as we talk about things like the fan bans and we say, let them back in, but let's not kid on that things might not have happened. We're always honest, or whether it's, the team or whether it's the board or whatever, we always try to look at things, or whether it's the collective. This is a planned protest. We tell you what we honestly think of it, whether we fully agree with it or whether we partially agree with it or whether we don't agree with it. So we're always balanced because we want to give you our authentic opinion on things. If we were anything other than that and lying to you, we'd come up with some sort of orchestrated response to everything that we do. Stephen would say the same thing as me, Paddy would say the same thing as me, and we'd all agree. And that's not what you're getting here. So hopefully that clears things up. And as I say, and I can see that there's been a lot of people that have been throwing out stuff on social media. Casual observers, even other Celtic publications have come out to write wee hit pieces. Various other platforms and podcasts have come out to have a go. I can't stop people doing that. But our intentions are honest and pure. Those guys that I was at the game with are the exact same. We all want meaningful change. And people might do it in different ways, but I can only speak for us, and I can say safely, we will never sit here and tell you what to do, how to think, what to do, and we get labelled as influencers. By the way, I can barely influence decisions in my house, my wife, my two bairns. So what chance have I got of influencing the thousands of people that tune into us? And I'm being serious about that. Come on. So, again, sorry if it upset people, and we'll talk about the optics, but I didn't feel personally that the company that I was in, and particularly the person who I was there of invite with, as I say, whose Celtic credentials and what he desires is the same as us, is aligned, would have been a problem. If I'm being honest, would I have posted a picture? Personally, no, not because I've anything to hide, because people kind of know my face. If somebody saw me walking at the parkhead and says, what the hell are you doing there? I would do exactly what I'm doing, tell you. But at least I'd be able to give you it on my terms. Whereas people grabbed a picture and ran with it without knowing the facts. And then it comes back to the idea of, yes, we were sitting with someone who happens to have a box. Does that make that person any less of a Celtic fan and wanting the same change as us because he happens his season ticket to be in a box? Does that make him any less a fan as someone that's sitting in the family stand or behind the box or 10 rows up in the north stand or in the standing section or up in the gods. It doesn't, and it shouldn't. So that's just where I'm at with that. All right. So hopefully you guys sit here and watch us. And if some people want to take that as negatively, I can't influence people. You can make up your own mind. Hopefully you see that we are honest and genuine guys, and we're here for the passion, the love of the club, and nothing more. We're certainly not getting paid for it. We're certainly not making fortunes off it, and that's what it is. So sorry that we had to go down and address it like that, but I just want to obviously give you the facts on something rather than a skewed truth that you might see out there. So Stevie, apologies you had to sit there, my man.
No problem at all with that. As you say, we just come on here and we talk. We try and be light-hearted, and we know that there are other people out there who will just try and stir it, as you say, without knowing the facts, knowing the content. That's why we don't tend to mention things. We don't I certainly don't know anybody that works within the club. I've got no sources of information. So we don't tend to comment on things that we've heard from a source. We leave that to other people. So quite right to address it, Stephen, but that's it. It's done and dusted, and let's just move on and be positive.
Yep. No, as I say, I don't want any assertions getting cast over myself, this podcast, or indeed the other guys that were in attendance at that game having a negative effect on, hopefully, you people out there tuning in and watching us, because, as I say, if you've been watching us long enough, you know what our intentions are. And certainly it is for the betterment of Celtic. You might not all agree at times. We might not all agree, as we see, but that's the glory of being Celtic fan.
That is the thing about it. Everybody's opinion counts as much as everybody else's. That's the thing. That's why all these discussions are great, because you can't know everything. And sometimes we'll bring up points, even between, as you say, the three of us, and somebody will look at it and say, "Oh well, I've never thought about it that way, so I see where you're coming from," and that kind of puts a different, I'm not here to change anybody's opinion, I'm just talking about you and Paddy, so if we respect everybody's opinion, we might not necessarily agree, probably a lot of the time we don't, but as you say, at least, get an opinion out there sparks debate, and people can see that we are just genuinely, wanting to get out there and just get behind the club in whatever way we can.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And again, I can see some of the comments about whose box it was. I understand Paul John didn't, but as I say, such is the nature of all these articles that are getting written out, that's out there in the ether. So there's no point in not mentioning it. That's who it was. And I'd imagine hopefully that would be all right. But it's now out there and it's been written in another wee blog, so people knew that's what it was. But no, we move on for that. As we said, we'll be here. We'll always be here. We'll always do what we're doing. And as we say, for the avoidance of doubt, we aren't part of the collective, but we will continually make mention and talk about whatever's coming up. And as always, we will give you our honest thoughts on whatever action or proposals that the collective may well be. Okay, that's where we're at with it. But anyway, let's get back to football. That's what we're here for, isn't it?
Woo!
Of course. We've got a game against Stuttgart. I think that don't start that. Don't say that we know best. We know none.
Heavy hint of sarcasm in there.
Aye, but no. See, the game midweek. In fact, let's bypass the game midweek. The game midweek's a training match, is it not? Let's look at the game at Ibrox. I've seen many folks saying this, right? We need to do something different at Ibrox. We can't go 4-3-3, right? It's just going to be death by 1,000 cuts. Suggested that before, right? And I seen this today and I quite liked it. So the suggestion here was that we go Sinisalo, Sarachi, Tierney, Scales, Arthur, Achuero, Kalmak, Nigrin in the Ox, with Dyson and Conchara up front, right? So you're obviously looking at it. It could be, it's kind of a 5, maybe it's a 3 at the back, depends how you want to look at it. And the other option, of course, would be that you go for a sort of 1-1 up front where you've got Nigrin just in behind and Finchara advanced. I am good for both of those options. I think that we need to kick on and we need to do something different. We need to spring a surprise, because playing the same guys in the same formation and hoping that the occasion just kicks them into life isn't going to be enough for this one.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, as we spoke about earlier in the podcast, I think for as bad as we are defensively, Rangers aren't great either. So I think if we can get good service into Kvanchara with Nygren following in behind, I think we will create chances. But it's our build-up play in the same way as it was against Hibs. When it's nice and quick, I think we've got the chance of doing something. When it's build you up, then the chance of turning over possession and being caught on the counter or whatever. Anybody that says they can kind of predict the outcome of a local derby, I've never prescribed to that. There's so many games that I've seen where the so-called forum team completely loses it on the day. Lightweight in midfield, that has kind of been our problem right across this season. It's finding that ideal three, if he's going to go with three in the middle.
I like that.
Something different. Again, if you go two up front, you've got to get the ball to them. You've got to get the ball to them nice and quick, though.
See, this is where I'm at. See, sorry, jump in. This is where I'm at with that formation I was talking about. Mm-hmm. I am all for, genuinely, I'm all for sacrificing Taneke and Yang. I'm all for it. I am all for putting Aguero forward. I'm all for putting Sarachi forward and leaning on Scales and Tierney.
Yep.
Scales, Tierney, and one other, and move them up. I'm all for it, because they can do the defensive dirty work that you won't get out of Yang. Yang's been trying it lately, but certainly Taneke lacks. So you'll get that defensive work. But we've seen both of them have got an engine on them and all. Yeah. So you're not really trading off a lot.
Yeah, no, as you say, it's kind of mind games now between the two managers. Does Martin stick with the tried and tested and gets caught out for it? Does he try something experimental and get caught out for it? The game, I think, will take care of itself. Physicality. Martin mentioned about Midtjylland, but if you move the ball quick, then it doesn't matter how physical your opposition are. If you play the ball into areas of space and you make good use of that space, then, as I say, that I think they're definitely there to be had. But whether we can keep a clean sheet and stop them scoring is unlikely, I would say. I don't want to be too pessimistic. Yeah. But, it's how we approach the game. I'm not worried about how they set up or what they do. Yeah. I think, as you say, we've got to look at just that something a wee bit different to try and catch them out a wee bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for change, and I'm just bringing up Gregor's last one. He's brought this up here. I see where we're going with that. I think that's too much of a departure, just personally, because I don't think we've got the personnel to set up and try and play something like that.
It takes time for guys to get used to a system like that. Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I'm looking at Nygren. Nygren is a must because he's in the right place and he's got the goal scoring. But if we are being honest, you almost lose one in midfield at points in the game with Nygren because he doesn't do that other stuff.
Defensively, yeah.
McCowan, I think, is just a bit too rough around the edges. He's got the passion. He's a Celtic man and all that kind of stuff. But I just think that there's a reason he's been out the picture. I think you need to roughly go with the guys that we've seen or the guys that have been coming on and maybe reshuffle them as we've discussed there. Listen, I'm all for the two up front. I would love that. Yeah. I don't see it happening, but it would be the exact kind of surprise that we need. But even making it more direct, where it's that sort of 1-1 where there's someone just tucked in behind and it's less flat and less predictable.
Got to be Nygren, as you say. Got to be. I think if he moves Nygren to somewhere else, I think Martin will really come in for some criticism because again balls into the box, bouncing about like a pinball. he's going to get on the end of it, a couple of these. Again, because we've talked about the strength of Negrin's game is being right place, right time, and on the end of something to get a chance away. He's not going to get them all on target, but he'll get more on target than he will, miss. So yeah, he's definitely got to be in behind, whether it's Kvanchara, whether it's Adamu, whether it's Maeda, maybe not. But let's just see. Martin, as I say, will kind of work it out, and we'll see how the game will take care of itself.
Absolutely. Well, we will see how it pans out. Of course, we've got the game coming up during the week. Let's get ourselves involved in that one, and hopefully, I am just going to take that one as it comes. Whatever will be, will be. I'm being very philosophical about it. My expectations are absolutely rock bottom, but there is bigger fish to fry. Let's be totally honest. There is so much more important. That game at Ibrox, it's quite frankly the be all and end all right now. There's bigger fish to fry on the footballing side, and there is bigger fish to fry in the non-footballing side. I'll say that as well. Yes. So thank you very much, listen, for everybody that's taking the time to join us. And I've seen as well in the comments, just want to mention, a couple of you are talking there, obviously, and a regular commenter on many of the different podcasts that are out there, including ourselves, is Monty. Monty has been in hospital. I believe he's been moved ward. He's some heart problems, some heart issues, blood pressure and the likes. So if you're watching this, Monty, where you are catching up or whatever, all the best to you, mate. I hope you are on the mend, because that is a terrible place to be. I've been in and out of hospital myself, blood people, and hopefully you are feeling better. And hopefully the Celtic aren't causing you any more grief in life, mate. So that's
keep the defib handy.
Absolutely, that's it. You don't want to Godspeed. Hopefully the big man's back and about. He's on watching the various podcasts that he loves to do so, and giving it some good chat as well. So that'll be us for now. Thank you very much for tuning in. As we says, if you like it, if you like Celtic World Order, give us a wee subscribe, give us a thumbs up.
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Absolutely. There we go. Thank you very much, guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again through the week. Hail, hail. Bye-bye now.